All right, we might kick off then. So welcome to the Integrated Innovation Network Startup Stories. My name's Siobhan Curran and I'm the manager of the University of Newcastle's I2N. So before we jump into our event, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm hosting this virtual event on the lands of the Awabakal and Worimi people, and I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you're all joining us from today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this event. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. You can also show your respect and awareness of the country you're joining us from by letting us know in the chat function at the bottom of your screen. And that the chat functions where you can also sort of connect and comment with other virtual attendees. And for those of you that want to ask questions, you can do so in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen as well. So for those of you that are new to the I2N, we're an initiative of the University of Newcastle, and we have the central aim of being a catalyst for regional transformation through enterprise skill development, new venture creation and entrepreneurship. And at the heart of the I2N is a strategically positioned entrepreneurship centre in Newcastle CBD, and I'm delighted to let you know that I'm actually joining you here today from I2N Hub Honeysuckle. We're open to fully vaccinated members, offering co-working facilities, and they're complemented by mentoring and a series of connection events like Startup Stories and cohort-based programs that cover everything from individual enterprise skill development, pre-startup creation, new venture establishment and acceleration. So all industries are supported, extending beyond traditional tech-based startups to include social innovation and creative industries. So this month, we actually celebrate 5 years of operation. It's gone by in a whirlwind, that's for sure. And with the support of the New South Wales Government's Boosting Business Innovation Program, the I2N's welcomed more than 4,000 innovators and entrepreneurs from a range of different industries and sectors at any stage of their journey and regardless of their affiliation with the university. And we've helped fuel, grow and graduate more than 104 teams through accelerator and incubator programs. And they've raised over $18 million in funding. They've fostered the creation of dozens of jobs, work integrated learning opportunities for our students. They're acquiring customers, they're winning awards, they're growing their teams and they're developing products and solutions that are delivering real world impact right here in the Hunter region. So if you'd like to know more about the I2N, please hit up our website at newcastle.edu.au/I2N. So a little outline of the format for this morning's event. We've taken a number of questions from attendees at registration. So we'll be leading with those after our speaker provides a brief background on their startup journey. And then we'll open up to any questions that have been asked via the Zoom Q&A function. So our guest this morning is Lauren Branson. She's the co-founder and CEO of Your Food Collective, a startup that's causing massive disruption to the online grocery industry while causing positive change for the environment. Lauren and her cousin Cara Cooper founded the company in 2015 and have since completed nearly 50,000 orders while helping over 15,000 households reduce their carbon emissions. Lauren's helped lead the company to an average year-on-year growth of 135%, and they're hoping to hit 5 million revenue for this financial year. They're also raising funding to scale across New South Wales and Australia, along with the expansion of their white label product lines. So welcome, Lauren, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us at Startup Stories this morning.
Thanks so much, Siobhan, and congratulations for the amazing work you're doing at ITN. I think that we need more innovators across the Hunter region, and you guys are key to helping support people do that. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
And thank you to everyone for joining and sharing their morning with me. It's great. I know life's busy, so thank you for taking the time to listen. And as Siobhan said, let's make it as interactive as possible. So I'll just run through a short outline in terms of how I got to where I am, and then jump in with questions, because I think we're all pretty over Zoom presentations and stuff these days, but so let's share with each other. I'm just going to, just a second, my computer slowed down. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Oh, here we go, just a sec, sorry, bear with me. And then we can jump right in. It's just taking a bit of time. Sorry, it's slow. And
yep, that's it. We can see it.
See it. I think we're on the second page. Just a sec. Sorry, it's slow. There we go. Okay, so I guess, my big takeaway from today is I'd love you guys to walk away from this morning's discussion realizing that your food choices are incredibly powerful. There's nothing greater that you guys can do to help protect biodiversity, reduce our carbon footprint, and you can do that 3 times a day. I think that everyone, climate change by far is the defining issue of our generation and those to come. And I think everyone's looking for positive ways in terms of how they can be part of the solution. And often, most of us are overlooking our food. So just stop and think, like, where was your food grown? How was it grown? And what are you supporting? And who are you supporting when you make those purchases? I think that what we really need to do is that every time we purchase food, we need to think about that impact and make, leaps and strides and decisions that will move us away from a commoditized food system where we've chased bottom dollar to a values-based food system that can deliver change across our landscape. And for Australia, where agriculture accounts for over 50% of our habitable land use, over 70% of our freshwater use, like, that is significant. So if we can get food right, we can achieve a lot of the outcomes that we need to heal our land and the planet. And that goes far beyond carbon, but carbon is something that, everyone connects to at the moment as well. So it's easy to measure, or it's not easy to measure, but it's something that, that people are starting to understand. So I guess to start with my journey and how I ended up here, food is definitely not been my background. I've obviously consumed and eaten for my whole life, but I started my career as an ecologist and have spent, 15 years protecting threatened species and their habitat across Australia, and became incredibly frustrated at our inability to effectively do that, whether that was in the public or private sector. And I think the real tipping point for me was being at the last sighting of Australia's most recent mammal extinction. And that was on a field trip to try and establish a captive breeding population of the Christmas Island pipistrelle. And it was a species that we just continually watched and monitored the decline of, and had done nothing to really to change or help that species. And so, it was the last ditch attempt, and we see that continually. But what I started to understand is where we saw the greatest issues with protecting our biodiversity was at the interface between agriculture and the natural environment. And what I started to understand as well is that was where it presented the greatest opportunity for us to drive change. So if we got food right and could grow food in a way that it was protecting habitat, it was improving our soils, it was providing habitat for biodiversity, and, in a large way, sequestering carbon from the atmosphere and locking it back in the soil, not only would we get to eat better food, but we would actually be supporting biodiversity and protecting our planet. So I come at it from a very different angle, which is incredibly important, because I think it really helps us, I guess, disrupt the industry and really position ourselves as a leader when it comes to understanding what's happening on farm, and then how that impacts what consumers need and the food that they have on their plate, and talk to consumers in a language that they can understand. So I guess, as Siobhan said, 5 years ago, we started Your Food Collective with my cousin as a co-founder. And we have large visions for the company, so set it up always to scale and drive significant impact, building a company that, that believes in the triple bottom line. And we started in Newcastle. Newcastle for us has been a great place for us to prove out our MVP. A lot of brands do use it as sort of a testing ground for new ideas, because you've got sort of, a very average demographic, but the barriers to entry are lower in terms of the competitive landscape, in terms of operational costs and those sorts of things. So it's been a really great place for us to test out our offering and, I guess, reiterate that value proposition. We've sort of about 18 months ago, we launched into the Sydney market as well. We started with, we started with 5 or 10 different producers and a small product offering. We've now got a full grocery offering, and we work with over 100 local producers. And we've got near-term goals, as Siobhan said, to reach sort of $30 million in revenue in our existing markets. So incredibly exciting. It's been a fantastic journey. I've learned a lot along the way. It's incredibly hard, but incredibly rewarding. So that's just a little bit on my background. So I guess to talk about what we do, so we bring locally sustainably grown food that's carbon positive to consumers' front doors. And why does that matter? So food accounts or contributes to 26% of greenhouse gas emissions, and 20% of the food we grow is wasted, which is just criminal. And then again, compounds carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions, sorry. And we address that in two ways, through regenerative agriculture and food miles. And then sort of business update, we've just closed out the last financial year at $1.6 million run rate. We've got a 64 net promoter score, which is incredibly high. And I guess for you guys that don't know what a net promoter score is, it's just how likely your customers are to refer you. Strong organic growth, which is fantastic and means we can keep our customer acquisition costs down. High quality of products at fair prices, and we've built proprietary tech that allows us to service these short supply, just-in-time, diverse local food systems. We're proudly founded by a female team. So myself and my cousin. So Cara's background is also not in food, but she's come from a corporate background, specialising in risk. And what she really saw was sort of risk on that macro level and the impacts of climate change across global portfolios, and understanding that we really needed to do something to address climate change rather than just dealing with it after the fact. We've got a strong advisory board as well, which is incredibly important when it comes to, I guess, navigating your way through the business world. I think that you need to have people around you that you can really trust and that support you wholeheartedly. So just to sort of, I guess, reiterate what the problem is. So our food isn't fresh, it's wasted, and one of our major greenhouse gas emitters. And to give you a bit of an idea about how food in the supermarket typically reaches your home, it starts at a primary producer, it goes into a truck, to the central market, into a truck, to a wholesaler, into another truck, to a distributor, into another truck, to the retailer, and finally home to you. So that can take 2 to 3 weeks. So in that process, your food isn't fresh. It's used a lot of greenhouse gas emissions just purely in transport, and then also in the storage of that product. It also means that we currently eat less than 1% of the variety of fruits and vegetables we once did, because we've preferentially now grow fruits and vegetables that can survive a long time in the supply chain, rather than food that's grown for its flavour or nutritional content. And then obviously, because of this long supply chain, 20% of that food is wasted. This happens 20 or 30% of that happens in the paddock before it even reaches the central market. Another 20% of that happens through distribution because of the long supply chain, 30%. And then the final 30% happens at home with the consumer, largely because that food isn't fresh. I think we've all seen it, that, your lettuce disintegrates or turns to sludge in your fridge before you even have a chance to eat it. And overall, food accounts for 26% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So as we look to move towards a net zero emissions circular economy, we must address the impact of food. So, and why now? I guess, I think I don't need to articulate that, post-COVID, everyone's moving online to online shopping. We've seen a 25.7% increase in online grocery sales year on year over the past 5 years. 8 out of 10 Aussies now shop online. But then also looking at the consumer trends coming out of COVID, it's health, nutrition, and the environment. So consumers are looking for ways to achieve that through what they purchase. And so we sit right at that intersection. So what is our solution? We work with Healthy Land, we work with local, so Healthy Land, which means that we work with growers who grow with respect to the systems and the environment that supports them. We're really local, so we quantify that. So 95% of our fresh produce comes from within 250 kilometres of the consumer's front door, which is really important. And again, COVID has brought a lot of things, has accelerated a lot of trends that we were seeing in the industry. So fractured supply chains has been a huge part of that, and particularly, longer supply chains. So being able to support and secure local food security has been really important. And then our products delivered with love, whether that's closed loop packaging, carbon neutral delivery services, because it's incredibly important, and that's the way that food should be treated. And we attach stories to that as well. So we help understand the stories behind the producers that grow our food, behind the people that deliver your food, and it just adds so much more value to what's on your plate. And then, so, this is, I guess, the network effect that we've built into our business, and it means that it's continually growing. So we're solving both for the customer and for the planet. And I think if you look at the businesses that will be leaders going forward, you need to be doing both, definitely. So the benefits, I guess, for producers, they get up to 3 times the price that they would if they go through the majors, which again, I think over the past sort of 30 years, we've lost more than 40% of our small to medium-sized growers, quite simply because they can't find a profitable avenue to market for their product. So this all hinges off the commoditization of food, where we've encouraged farmers to grow more for less so that consumers can pay less when they get to the checkout. But it's ripping everybody off, most, predominantly consumers, because there's no nutrition in that food. There's no longevity in what we're doing. There are hidden costs that we're not paying for as well. So for us, we help those small to medium-sized producers bring their product to market. It means, again, that we're supporting regenerative growers. I won't go into heaps of detail about regenerative growers, but as I said, these are growers that grow with respect for the environment and the systems that support them. It means they help look after the soil quality and condition on their farms, and they sequester carbon from the atmosphere and lock it back up in the soil, which again is a significant part of the climate change solution. And I think if you guys listened to the presentation that Hone did a couple of weeks ago, they talked a lot about that as well. And for customers, it means that you get a fresher product. So it's less than 48 hours from paddock to plate when you shop with us, which is incredibly important. It also means that the food is ripened on the bush. We get so much feedback from people. Just last week, one of our customers saying, wow, I bit into one of your mandarins and it just catapulted me back to being 12 years old because that food was full of flavor. And I think that's something that, because we're eating food that's out of season, it's traveled long distances, I think we've become accustomed to food that tastes like cardboard. So we're putting flavor back on people's plates. It also means that, we don't have everything all year round, which is really fantastic. And it means that when we do have it, it's actually full of flavor. And I think if you look at, something that I haven't touched on a lot here is in terms of what we're eating and what's that doing for our health. So if we look at things that are coming out around the Mediterranean diet, the planetary diet, what we need to do to really significantly address systemic health issues is eating food that's in season and locally grown. And that means going without stuff, but then really loving it and enjoying it when it's at its peak, because that way we're getting much greater nutrient dense food because it hasn't traveled long distances to reach us. And so we're a tech-enabled logistics business. From our sourcing to our fulfillment and logistics, we've considered regenerative and circular practices across the business. And currently, we've built out a tech stack that facilitates the back end. So that's just in time, short supply through micro DC network, with a number of these small to medium-sized producers that all have different fulfillment requirements. And we're just about to progress on our tech roadmap and really build out that customer-facing interface that helps consumers understand at the point of sale what's really important for them and for their food choices. So there's potential to grow the business to $250 million in revenue in Australia and New Zealand alone, and we will chase that goal. Our customers love us. So in terms of demographics, 70% female between the 25 and 55-year-old age gap, and they're conscious shoppers. Milestones, I went through a lot of this as we started, so probably won't touch too much on this, but yeah, we're tracking towards where we need to be, which is really exciting. I guess for the next stage of growth, it's really doubling down in our existing markets and building out our tech stack. I guess in terms of revenue targets, we just, as I said, closed out at $1.5 or $1.6 million worth of revenue last year. We'll reach just under 5 at the end of this financial year, and then reach 16 at the end of FY23. And this is within our existing market. So for us, we've shown 12% market penetration here in Newcastle, and we will chase that goal in the Sydney market as well. Just to give you a bit of an idea about what our offering looks like, this is the website, our social media, and yeah, just a brand experience. And then so that's, in a nutshell, that's what we do. I've tried to keep, I'm going to stop sharing, keep it short and sweet, but hopefully that gives you an idea. And for all of you guys in the region, jump on, place an order, eat our food this weekend. It's the best way to experience our brand. But yeah, jump in with questions because I know there's a lot.
Thanks so much, Lauren. That's a really snappy, great overview, very information dense. And it sounds like you've just done all of this like this.
Do not get that impression at all. It does not happen like that. I was talking to another beautiful company in the food space yesterday, and we were we were having sort of a conversation about the bigger picture, and then he's like, I've got to jump on the production line and start packing my orders. So it's it's very much, and it's great, at this stage of business we're very, very close to the operations, which is fantastic, and it gives us a great understanding for that. But it's not easy, and there's definitely no job is too small.
Yeah, and you can tell you've pitched. You've got some really great experience pitching. The deck's amazing, and you're covering off a lot of the value points that not just investors but consumers really want to hear and appeal to them as well. So congratulations. I'll jump into some questions that we've received at registration. So the first one's from Christina Roberts at CR Creative, and she's asking, how are you managing the process of scaling up the business? You kind of showed us that a timeline of how you've been able to develop out from MVP to a pop-up distribution center so can you explain a little bit about how that process, the decision-making process around that, has evolved?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really interesting, and often can be a bit of a trap for entrepreneurs and startups as well, is that you need to build for where you are now, but then also build to be able to scale and understand all of the I guess where you're going to cap out at different parts across the business. So whether that's tech, and understand, how much of a lead time do I need to be able to build something to fix that before I reach capacity? Or for us, in terms of logistics and warehousing, what's our capacity in our current warehouse, and what's the lead time that we would need to set up a new warehouse? And it's really important, we've, like every startup, we adapted the lean methodology. So respect that, time and resources are limited, and you don't want to burn heaps of cash being set up to be a massive business when actually your revenue is really small. So just making sure, it's always a trade-off, I think, and making sure that you understand at what point you need to invest in scaling. And I think that for all of our operations, there is the capacity to scale to a reasonable size within that, whilst keeping costs low. And also it's just accepting that sometimes things are manual before you can automate them and really drive those economies of scale, and just accepting that. And I think also always looking to companies that are sort of that next step ahead. So for us, whether that's the warehousing logistics, whether that's the tech, whether that's the customer growth piece, understanding what it looks like at that next stage, so that you can see where you need to get to and what you need to put in place to do that. Hopefully that helps. But I think that, definitely in the early days, we did fall into the trap of burning more money than we probably should, being set up to do a greater capacity than we were actually doing.
Interesting. How much did the crowdfunding campaign assist in the validation of the product and the service that you're offering?
Yeah, the crowdfunding campaign has been fantastic. So for those guys who haven't followed that story, we recently closed out a crowdfunding campaign. We raised over 600,000 from the public, and then another 600,000 from a local investor, so a strategic investor. So close that out at 1.2, which is fantastic. And I guess the crowdfunding has really helped validate that with consumers. And the crowdfunding was great because it gave us an opportunity to really get our producers on board, because what would be fantastic and what really helps for those guys is that if they can own more of their supply chain as well. So if their benefits don't just stop at the farm gate, I guess what we see across the agricultural and food landscape is that it's very siloed. So you have farmers that grow the food, you have retailers that distribute it, and then you have wholesalers that distribute it, and then you have consumers over here. No one's typically talking to each other. So what we've been able to do by working directly with our growers and is bring them closer to their consumer, and then help them grow a better product, whether that's environmentally, whether that's in terms of the size, or just understanding what the consumer demand is, because producers are so busy just doing what they do, which is growing. So for them to be able to own more of the supply chain, that was fantastic. And to get bring customers on board as investors, that's been fantastic as well.
That's a nice segue into a question by Jodie McLean, who's from the University of Newcastle, and they're asking, how did you come up with the 7-point sustainability criteria?
So I guess that's based on my background as an ecologist and understanding, understanding farm practices and the systems and processes that support, essentially our life on this planet. And then also working with people like Land to Market. So they've got environmental verification process that does verify soil health and ecosystem processes and improvement across farms. At the moment, it's sort of like regenerative growing is very new to the market, and people are doing it really well, but farmers are also I guess they're a little bit skeptical when it comes to another certification sort of process. So for us, it's very qualitative at the moment. So we go out, we visit every single one of the producers that we work with, and through my career as an ecologist, it's pretty easy to see and understand what they're doing on farm and whether that's improving. I think that we also we support regenerative growers on their journeys. So they're at different stages of that, which is incredibly important, because if we're going to drive change throughout and create local food security and change the way that farmers are growing, it's important to bring them along on that journey and help them understand that value proposition, that if they grow with respect to the environment and the systems that support them, one, they'll get a higher quality product, and you can reach a consumer who's willing to pay more for that because of the built-in environmental benefit, and then also the greater nutrient output. So I guess that's how we reached our 7-point sustainability criteria. We're currently, and I guess now at this stage of our growth, working with some fantastic international companies that will really help us put more quantitative data behind that and really rank our producers in terms of what they're doing and what that means both for the nutritional content and then for the environmental impact. So really getting much more robust around that.
Nice. This question's from Amanda Reardon from the Murrurundi Collective, and she's asking, and this is kind of tied to what you're just talking about, how do you vet your suppliers? So if I'm a farmer in the Hunter region and I'm not yet part of the Food Collective, how do I get involved? And how do I make sure that I'm going to meet your criteria?
Yeah, so you reach out and have a chat to us, I guess. It's different because all the growers are sort of at different stages in their growth or in their direct-to-consumer journey. There's some fantastic producers that will come to you. It's like, I've got a brand, this is how I grow, this is what I do, and can really articulate that. Or other growers will come to you and you can help get that out of them. But at the moment, it's very much a conversation. And again, with our deep understanding of what's involved in each category in terms of production. So whether that's from, your orchardists down to your grazers to market gardeners, and understanding, it's pretty easy to understand in a quick conversation how people grow and whether they fit our value proposition. And then, then they send out in samples and we look at the logistics and how that works. We're also now at this stage of growth looking at building out support for producers and connection to other networks, because what's really important, I guess, is helping growers, I guess, find a market. Growers who are growing regeneratively find a market for their product, whether that's through us or whether that's through different distribution channels. We've got a great understanding of what the consumer needs, so we can help those guys to understand how they can meet that through us or through other markets or other market opportunities. So it's there's lots of people out there. I was on a farm on Monday and just trying to understand the owner's vision for the farm, and then also the actual manager who was enacting and carrying those tasks out on a day-to-day basis, and talking to those guys about how do you find information or support and knowledge around different farming practices, and trying to connect them to the right people so that they do have the support and networks that they can reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking of planting this, or how often should I rotate my cows through here? Or, if I'm a market gardener, do you think I should put ducks in here, or what's that going to do? So just trying to help improve those networks, because there's a lot of conversations that need to happen. There's nothing that's set in stone. And I think that for growers, we're really moving towards, and for everything in life, I think being more, it's not a checklist that you need to tick off. It's being much more intuitive and understanding, okay, this land or this patch of soil needs this now, and then that at a later date, but that's different to this soil that's up on the top of the hill because I need to treat that differently. So just trying to help them through that process as well.
I love that idea of helping the farmers helping the farmers. Mark Apthorpe from the University of Newcastle's asked, how do you ensure quality across such a wide range of products provided by others?
Yeah, so we have a really strict quality control process when food comes into the warehouse, and we also have legally binding contracts with our producers to, sets the standard for quality that we need, whether that's a product that needs to have a set use by date on it, or whether that's, you know, fresh produce when it's coming in, and what that needs to look like, and then push back on the producers if they haven't met that quality. We are looking at digitizing that process, and there's some great ways that we can do that. For us as a business, one thing that has, I guess, has been a challenge in terms of that quality is that most other, you know, 99% of other food retailers go down to the central market, they walk through the market, they have a look at it, they pick it and they bring it home. It means that they're not working directly with the producers don't get paid fairly, and you've often got no idea where that food's come from. So we work directly with our producers and they bring that food into our distribution centre. What it means for us though is that we don't have visuals on that, the quality of that, before it comes into our distribution centre. So it's about having really solid relationships with those producers, understanding what our expected level of quality is, and communication of changes in that quality prior to it reaching the warehouse. And then, because it allows us to meet those customer expectations as well. But it has been a new challenge for us that we have to work with, and producers are on board with that. It's also because it's just meeting, for us, it's about meeting consumer expectations. So, and, you know, and changing the pricing point of stuff if it's coming in a different quality. And I think when we look at food waste, it's really important for the consumer to also understand that there are things that are often outside of your control in terms of quality, but just communicate that to them and help them understand. So a really good example of that recently has been pears. So because of the labour shortage, it took them much longer to harvest the pear crop this year, which meant that the pears were on the tree for maybe a couple of days up to a week longer than they probably should have been. So it's meant that they've ripened a lot more quickly after they've been picked as well, and they've had a few other issues. So it's about, like, we're not going to waste all that food, but let's communicate that to consumer. Perhaps they're purchasing that at a lower cost, and let's help them understand, okay, pears might be better for poaching this time. And really getting back to understanding when food's at a different quality, what you need to do with it. And that's sort of, I guess, you know, a traditional way of eating as well.
That's so amazing. I love hearing about all of this. We've got a question from another researcher at the University of Newcastle, Nick de Villa. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. What do you believe consumers want, and is there a way the university can help you tailor research towards this?
$1 million question, and I would love a straight answer to that. We're just diving into that, so it'll be good, like, reach out and we can take that conversation offline as well. We're also having just starting some conversations with some guys both in the US and at Deakin University to really drill down to understand what the consumer wants and what they're willing to pay for are often different things. I think it's about, for us, it's about understanding what language we can talk to the consumer in when it comes to making food choices that are more sustainable. And so trends coming out of both Europe and the US in terms of a hierarchy when it comes to consumers' decisions when they're looking at food, it's taste, health, and then sustainability. So very rarely do you walk into, or like you go out to dinner and you, like, on a menu, like, I'm going to choose the most sustainable thing here. You choose the tastiest thing, and then off the back of that, you're like, oh wow, that was really sustainable as well, so I feel better, it sits better in my stomach. So it's about understanding how you can communicate that and slowly bring consumers in on that journey. You can't just go straight out with, you know, let's eat carbon positive food. That means that, you know, there's no strawberries until November. That means that there's actually no, like, you know, for the hunter, that's no melons now. So all you guys are digging into melons, it's way too early, hang off and wait. So, you know, trying to help them understand and slowly grow to get towards that, because there are a lot of changes when it comes to what's on your plate, and that has been a challenge with communicating that to consumers. Like, there was a one of our fantastic customers came to us in the middle of winter, and said, I love what you guys do, but there's 6 things here on my shopping list that I can't get from you guys. I said, right, give me that shopping list. I'm going to help you. We'll find those producers, and because we're always looking to grow our product range. But it was 6 things. She was looking for eggplant, corn, and full-size tomatoes and red capsicum. Like, that is a summer recipe. You should not be cooking that in the middle of winter. So helping consumers understand, and it's the way that the top chefs have cooked for years. They don't go into the supermarket, so they don't go into the supermarket or to a producer with a shopping list and say, okay, this is what I'm going to cook up in my Michelin-starred restaurant. They go out to the producer and say, hey, what's really good at this time of year? And I'm going to celebrate those flavors and cook that in my restaurant. So we really need to flip that around, even for consumers, and think, okay, what's in season? That's what I'm going to be cooking now. And being able to look at that recipe that, have the eggplant, the capsicum, and the corn. I think I can swap these out for these beautiful brassicas, which are winter vegetables, and that's still going to be okay. And we're working with some really fantastic producers in Wagga, and looking at, creating seasonal meal kits that can help people do that, because we need to, again, in terms of farmers being a little bit more intuitive, consumers need to be that way when it comes to their food as well, rather than being so prescriptive and think, I'm going to cook this today because that's what I do on Tuesdays. Maybe in Tuesday's taco night, or like Taco Tuesday in winter looks different to Taco Tuesday in summer, and trying to be a little bit more understanding about that, because it's so much better for our health and the nutritional content of the food too.
We've got a question from Gloria Heap in the chat that's kind of related to this, which is, what methods do you use to communicate your customers, for example, the pear situation, or the situation where the person was looking for the summer salad vegetables in the middle of winter? So is there, you sort of say, like, this is the box for the week, or your order for this week, and here's some recommendations on some recipes or something that you can utilize these ingredients?
Yeah, so there's a number of different touch points that we have with our consumer, and we're always trying to communicate sort of what's in season. People are always looking for recipes, so we have lots of different recipes on our website, and then also partner with different chefs and people who create recipes. We also, so there's different ways to shop with us as well. So you can order a set box, and so that's something that we curate based on what's available at the current time and what's best in season. And inside that, we choose a hero item, and we put some tips in there in terms of, so if it's beetroot, like, this is what you can do with beetroot. This is how you should store it. These are some great recipes, and this is the health benefits that beetroot provides for you. And then also, we're just looking at improving that communication for the consumer across the website as well, so they can see that as they're purchasing. So understanding, okay, these are peak season, or these are coming out of their season, or and that sort of stuff as well, so that they can see that. There's a lot to communicate, so we don't communicate all of it because that's overwhelming for the consumer as well. So, and people want different levels of that communication. So for us, it's always been understanding how much and when and where, and we're still understanding and helping. And I guess, getting better at that and understanding the consumer in terms of what they want. We also, we send out regular emails. We've got really active social channels, and all of that stuff does come out there.
We've got another question here from Stephanie Miller at the Greater Bank. She's also a customer of Your Food Collective, and she's asking, what brought about the decision to open up to crowdsource funding investment?
Yeah, I think, as I touched on before, crowdfunding's it's relatively new in the Australian investment landscape, but it was a fantastic opportunity. We've got a really strong community network of producers and consumers that support us. And for us, being a values-driven business who will grow with respect to the triple bottom line, it's really important to make sure that our investors are on board with that, because that can really shape the direction of the business. So being able to give that opportunity to our customers and producers and the general public was really a great opportunity for us, for them to jump on board and for them to grow. And also, to create different, a number of additional, I guess, brand ambassadors through their investment as well, was a fantastic opportunity. It also meant that we could talk publicly about our capital raise, which has also been fantastic, because outside of the crowdfunding, we've, and prior to crowdfunding, we were talking to strategic investors, but a lot more have come to us subsequently through that crowdfunding, which was fantastic as well. So it's just, it was a great vehicle to get our community, who was heavily engaged in what we're doing, involved in an investment level, and then also to really make sure that we were sticking to the values of the business as we grow, because that is incredibly important to Cara and I.
Going into the crowdfunding campaign, knowing that if it would be successful, you'd have those advocates, who had chipped in for the crowdfunding, so those potential end users. Did you consider the added benefit of a successful crowdfunding campaign providing leverage for you to be able to go to other investors to say, look at the support we're getting, and here's the validation of the market's want for this service?
Yeah, no, we didn't think about it necessarily like that. Crowdfunding is polarizing for investors. Wholesale investors look at it like, oh, I don't know, I'm not. So we had a number of wholesale investors we were talking to pre-crowdfunding that then decided not to invest in us because we were going through the crowdfunding pathway, just because it's new and investors are cautious. In Australia, they're very conservative. They're like, my vehicle is wholesale investment. That's what I feel comfortable with, and that's what I can do. But it does, for a consumer-facing brand like ours, it does help validate the value proposition significantly. And I guess also, those wholesale investors that have joined us, as part of that crowdfunding, and in addition to it, I guess it just, they're the type of investor that we want as well, because they do understand the great opportunity that it provides the business. There's lots of different types of investors out there, and I think it's important to partner with the right one. So the crowdfunding has helped us do that, both at the crowdfunding level and then also at the wholesale level.
We've got some questions here, sort of more around the challenge management and building out the business. Madeline Boron, who's a student at the University of Newcastle, is asking, what's been the hardest challenge so far?
I think they just get harder, quite frankly. I was talking to a guy he's built and sold and exited his business, and we were just talking quite frankly about the stress levels and the appetite for risk in growing your business. I'm like, when does that sick feeling in your stomach stop? And it's like, it just becomes a different sick feeling about different things. There's a lot of pressure, and there's not always answers to that. I think there's always solutions, and there's no point in stressing about it. Like, you will always find a way through things. I think when the greatest pressure is always around money, isn't it? It's like, do you have enough to pay your staff at the end of the week? Are you reaching your sales targets? Can you get that growth that you need with the current capital that you've got? Whatever business, whether your values or whether you're just a pure capitalist business, it always comes down to money, really. And I think that for us as co-founders, so Cara and I, cousins, so there's no hidden agenda or anything like that. We can talk very openly about both our personal and business situations. So Cara and I haven't drawn a salary for the past 5 years, which creates a lot of pressure financially, personally, but we've been able to talk about that and understand that as well, which has been really good. The challenges are always there, and they're always very real, and I think that you've just got to back yourself. And I think that also comes to that advisory board that I was talking about, is making sure that you can have people that you completely trust and that can call bullshit when they see it, or, guide you where they need to. And again, that there's no hidden agenda there. So our advisory board are sort of people that we have had long-standing business relationships prior to Your Food Collective as well. So we really trust those guys. So that's been important in those early days. And I think just, believing that you'll get there, you've got to back yourself and have, family and support that will also help you to do that, because there's lots of challenges. I don't know whether that's answered that question for you, but they just change at different sizes of growth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kind of related to that is a question that Mark Apthorpe's asked in the Q&A, which is, have you reached profitability yet? And when do you expect to reach profitability? So you haven't drawn a salary since the beginning. What's your expectations around that?
So yeah, we were sort of middle of this year, we were profitable, and we've continued to do that on a month-on-month basis. Now with this capital raise, we will, we'll invest more in the business, and then, see the growth outcomes of that. So with new investment, we should sort of reach profitability mid to late next year again on our current trajectory.
We've got another question here from David Sivia at Feedback Organic. Great to see your progress. What's been the biggest takeaway on linking with mission-aligned industry partners? And I guess you consider investors as part of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. You just got to get out there and walk the footpath. I think there's no, and I think also making sure that there's definitely values alignment and a mission alignment. I think the greatest partnerships that we've seen, and whether that's larger industry partnerships all the way down to, social media collabs and those sorts of things, it's where you've got values aligned audiences and goals, and you can both you can both see advantage in the partnership. I think that, it's hard. Everyone in every business is down their own little rabbit hole doing their things. And I think it's a real skill to get people to put their head up and to really, for your missions to align and to get them to see priority in what you're doing as well, to make sure that you can drive together. And I think that there's a skill in doing that, and you've got to have a lot of conversations, and you've got to, keep pestering people, and just find the right fit as well. I think that, we've been really lucky with a number of different advisors and opening different doors into networks that have definitely helped with the capital raise and bigger conversations. I think you've just also got to be really persistent.
We've got another question here from Jamie Sy at Tenfold Australia, who's asking, how do you inspire producers, suppliers, and your team members to continually improve their processes to reduce unnecessary waste?
Yeah, that's been great, and something that's really exciting. So all of our, in terms of internally, all of our staff are incredibly on board with our mission and come to us with different ways that they can improve processes and reduce waste, whether that's food waste or packaging or recycling, all that sort of stuff. And we're also looking to international markets to help understand what they're doing over there. What are the global leaders doing when it comes to food waste, and or food waste or packaging waste, whatever that is, because it's complicated. Like packaging is really complicated. Food waste and its endpoint is really complicated. So making sure that we're actually making the right decisions to reduce that footprint and truly reduce that footprint. So always, as I said, looking towards what other people are doing to then building those networks to make sure that internally we can do that. Conversations with producers have been great. And whether that again comes down to like on-ground farm management to then the packaging that they're packaging their products in. We've got a great network of producers that we work with and that we also don't currently work with through our commercial operations. So again, being able to connect those guys and say, hey, great, here's a fantastic beef brand. They're using 100% compostable packaging and have a 4-week shelf life on their fresh cuts. So let's get you guys together and understand what that looks like and how we can leverage those opportunities. It's also about we have great it's all about relationship building. We have great relationships with our core producers and can talk with them and help encourage them to change what they're doing to reach a greater market opportunity.
And sort of tied to that is another question from Sophie Benjamin, who's asking, how do you ensure that your supply chain remains robust and that orders reach customers in the quoted time?
Yeah, so we've got, I guess, in terms of the product supply, we've got tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 producers. So we can always call on those guys if there's some sort of issue with supply at that end, because understanding, I guess, if there's climatic events or those sorts of things that can impact supply from different regions. So we've made sure that we've got a robust incoming supply. And then in terms of the outcoming and reaching customers on time, we've got a pretty tight operational process in the warehouse. And also a lot of that just comes to communication. So typically our issues with supply and meeting consumers on time with their deliveries is usually from supply from producers that holds that up. Okay. But then it's being able to communicate to consumers and say, okay, look, this hasn't come in, so do you want us to hold your order for tomorrow? Would you like to have half of it today and the other half tomorrow? So being able to have fluid communication, I think, creates a lot of tolerance with the consumer and helps, and I guess helps you meet their expectations. So if they were planning to cook a lasagna and it hasn't come in yet, can we get them something else for that meal tonight, and then we'll get the rest of it tomorrow? And just keeping it a fluid path of communication, because food is perishable, it is variable, and it is really personal for the consumer as well. So just making sure that we communicate that.
Looking at the technology aspect of the business, Jessica Piper, who's a student at the university, has asked, how many iterations has your online program gone through, and what metrics do you focus on when people access the site? Yeah,
so heaps of iterations. I couldn't, and I guess we've sort of, technology is something I think people think, oh, great, you build it and it's done, and it, it's a fluid solution, but it's not. It's always hacking through that stuff. And sometimes you come back to manually working on things. I remember, in the early days when things would crash, it was just back to Excel spreadsheets to figure out what food needed to go to what people and how much was coming from where. So you've always got to have a backup. And for us, I guess we're a customer centric business. So it's really those customer metrics. So have people been able to convert and process their orders? How many, where are people getting stuck on the website, and how can we help that customer journey through to the end point, which is purchase essentially. So looking at those different metrics as we need to.
Have you done experimentations like a day in the life where you kind of look over the shoulder of people that are actually using the website to see, how?
Yeah, we have done some of that, and we're just about to do more of that at the moment as we look to build out different sections of the website. Our website's definitely, by no means is it perfect, but again, it's sort of like every business, it's fit for purpose now, and you've slowly got to improve as you go. And as you said, going back to customers and understanding where's the greatest opportunity to improve their experience with us that will also hit our bottom line is what we focus on when we look at additional builds.
And is the idea of doing those additional builds just building in new features? Do you ever do like tests of particular, like A/B split tests of particular features, or like how do you sort of prioritize and decide this is a new feature that we need to add to the site?
It's based on customer feedback and or where we understand there's a sticking point that's impacting our bottom line, as I said. So it needs to definitely drive sales through what it's doing. And we can see that, being an e-commerce business, you get so much information about your consumer, about their habits, and, where they're falling out on the website, what their problem is. And then also, we have a really engaged customer community, which is fantastic. So we reach out to them continually and ask, like, what are the issues? How can we help? And then understanding, I guess, then we do a sort of a risk assessment, understand the greatest opportunity through that. And then we haven't gotten yet down to the level of sort of A/B testing of buttons or colors or those sorts of things. For us, our changes are still at much more at a macro level.
Yeah, it's kind of, you have that sort of discovery phase and then the validation phase, and then there's, okay, let's make it look good and pretty, and get down to the finer details to tweak that sort of 1% extra sales. Related to that, Claire Collins is asking in the Q&A, is your IT in-house?
So we do some of it in-house, and then we also have a contractor who's based in New Zealand. She sort of spends half her time in Australia and New Zealand and does a lot of our stuff for us as well. We're probably, we're just looking to build out our tech team, and more of that will be in-house. It's about, I guess, understanding the benefit of using contractors is that you can really narrow down in a specialty if you're looking at some sort of element, which is great whilst we build up the team. Eventually the team will be in-house, but at the moment, the combination of in-house and contractors works really well for us.
And how were you able to make that contact with that contractor? Like have that relationship? I guess a lot of founders we come across, particularly like they're domain experts, but they don't have the technical expertise. So their common question to us is, I need a technical co-founder, or can you give me a lead on where I can get someone to help me build out the thing? And we also see a big trap where people, spec in a website build or an app build to an internationally based team, pay a lot for it, and then launch it, and then realize, it needs all these alterations, and that's going to cost extra. And actually, or the customers or the potential customers or perceived customers don't actually respond to the product, and so they kind of wasted all of this money on building out a prototype. So I love hearing about the iterations, but I'm just curious to know what was your decision about that sort of, do I bring on a technical co-founder or do I outsource it? And if I outsource it, where do I go for that?
Yeah, so I guess there's lots of questions in there. First of all, so our recommendation came from a friend, and it was enough to get us started. And then it turned out that there was also enough depth in the skills of this team, like the contractor, that we could continue to grow with them, which was fantastic. So perhaps we're lucky. I think, like everything, we went to the market to begin with as well. And, we would come back with quotes ranging from, $50,000 to $250,000 to build a website for us. And I think it's, the way that e-commerce has grown. If you were doing this 10 years ago, you probably had to build a bespoke website, but there's so many off-the-shelf solutions at the moment. So I think it's trying to also understand, and that's what we currently, what we're always assessing is like, are there off-the-shelf options that we can test something really cheaply and easily? It might not be that 100% shiny, beautiful thing that you want, but it means you can test it. You can, I guess, get that test learn feedback loop going really quickly. You can prove it. Can I drive revenue with that? Is that going to make an impact? And then, okay, great, what we can build out, what's the cost for us to build out something, or what are the limitations with this third party? I think that there's very few companies these days that actually build out completely their own tech stack. If you're going to do that, I think you've got to have really deep pockets, and I think you need to identify who those investors are going to be up front so that you can do that. I think even talking, as we look to build out our next, progress on our tech roadmap, and the next step, it will probably not have very much tech involved in it to begin with. It's just proving out that value proposition, and then you can build the tech afterwards. If I also look at, just if we had spent $250,000 up front to build our website before we'd even opened and started driving revenue, what we would have built would be completely different to actually what the customer needed and what we need right now. So I think you've just got to look for, again, like the easiest way to prove what you're doing. And that's like off the shelf stuff is fine. I used to think about, like, when you were talking to people about what you were doing, the components of your tech, I used to think, oh, I'm a bit embarrassed that we use some off the shelf stuff and some stuff that we build ourselves, but everyone does it. And I think it's a smarter way to do it. And I think, talking to some really large companies that have been very successful in the e-commerce space, they've done the same, like, initially built their own, then went to third party components, and then have, go back to building their own. I think if you build your own, like you've just commented, it means that you're then beholden to that specific developer or process. And it also means that usually there's not little add-ons and apps that you can use to test stuff easily. So it would take 6 months to build something, whereas if you use something off the shelf that might have all of these apps associated with it, you can then easily test and learn before you decide what you're going to do.
Yeah, nice. That's a great insight. It's a big issue for a lot of non-technical co-founders. I really appreciate you sharing that insight, and appreciate your time today, Lauren. It's been fantastic. You've got a lot of really interested, impact-aligned listeners in on the webinar today, and lots of really great questions. So thanks for those. And thanks, Lauren, for your time as well. Really, really appreciate it, knowing how busy you are. I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of opportunities that we've got coming up here at the I2N for those of you that are interested. So for the researchers on the call, if you're a PhD or early mid-career researcher, I'd highly encourage you to consider making an application into Navigator for Researchers. This is a 2-day face-to-face program that will be delivered late in December, mid-December. And we have an information session coming up on next Tuesday, the 9th of November from 12 to 12:30. So if you want to know a little bit more about that program and explore your impact potential with your research, please come along. We're also hosting our first live event in I2N Hub Honeysuckle for our fully vaccinated friends. So our monthly networking event, Join the Dots, is all about startups and the startup ecosystem in the I2N. So we'll be featuring founders and supporters in their little mini presentations at the beginning of Join the Dots, and then we're opening up for just regular old-fashioned face-to-face networking with some drinks and nibbles. So join us at I2N Hub Honeysuckle on Thursday, the 25th of November from 5 to 7 p.m. And we're back with co-working. So Incubator is back. As long as you're fully vaccinated, you can make an application to co-work from our space. We've got a variety of different memberships that are available, from hot desking all the way to offices and full-time memberships. So if you're interested in exploring getting away from the home and coming back to work with people in person, check out our website. And for those of you that are on the startup journey or even scaling up, you might want to consider getting some help through our Venture Mentors Service program. So this is team-based mentoring. You'll have between 2 and 5 mentors on your team, and the meetings are at your behest. So when you need help, you call us up. We'll set you up with your team for you to be able to have your get through the challenges that you're encountering as part of building out your business. You do have to be affiliated with the University of Newcastle or an I2N program participant to take advantage of Venture Mentor Service. So that's it for now. We will have one last Startup Stories later this year in the first Wednesday of December. We're just lining up the speaker for that now. And we're looking to be able to host that both as an in-person and virtual event. So until then, we will see you then. And Lauren, again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Everyone, I hope you have a fantastic day.
Thanks very much, Ron.
Thanks, Lauren.